Hello Galactic family. Billion years ago in the Alpha Centauri star system, there were several groups specializing in helping planets across the galaxy. Various commands, various beings of various different races. There, the cradle of Ashtarian civilization Ashtar came from Alpha Centauri. These various groups were specialized in various areas of existence. Among these various groups of that system was a commander of a fleet specializing in transitional security, area of protection to entire planetary systems and planets that were undergoing their transition. There, he was highly respected and loved by all, by his loyalty, the high celestial forces that coordinated great works by the cosmos. This commander was called Zetrov. It was learned from the High Command that there was a small disharmony on a planet near the main star of the system. It was not necessarily a planet that was in transition like the Earth for example, but a 4D planet that was sort of like a university for stellar commanders, aspiring, indeed, fleet leaders and transitional followers. Several portals had in that system portals that brought students from various parts of that alpha system to even other galaxies because that university was known as one of the most efficient and fast-learning galaxies in the planet maximum known as Ashtar SHERAN. Ashtar was on a mission in another system, but he knew of the disharmony that was taking place on that planet. The entrance portals of the students there were suffering some kind of anomalous interference from a kind of AI artificial intelligence that attempted to enter the planet to act there. Quickly the High Command through Ashtar determined an intervention in that planet, to directly aid Zetrov, who was very dear to Ashtar, was called on a mission, and Zetrov was also known for his many abilities with portals. Zetrov accepted the mission immediately. It would be as if his first great mission and was happy by the confidence of Ashtar and the High Commandos, and at the same time worried because the situation was delicate and one did not know exactly what was going on there. At least he himself, Zetrov, did not know what was happening until he saw the situation very closely. Analyses made by the Great Command analysts actually indicated the interference of an artificial intelligence from outside this known universe. Everyone in that alpha system had physical, 4D bodies. Ashtar himself also had his physical body in that space. The AI trying to get in there was apparently more advanced than those of that system, because at least the technology they were using was a little unknown to the scientists of that Alpha Command. Ashtar watched everything in the distance, as if he knew everything that was happening and at the same time relying on his fleets there and working to resolve the situation. Ashtar was, to the eyes of the inhabitants of Earth, very young, looking like a 15-year-old boy. Zetrov a little less, appearance of 14. Much of the fleet already under Zetrov's command had looked between 14 and 18 years. Zetrov, as already requested, took over the mission, and was immediately checking the more than 1,000 portals on the planet and checking the interferences that were taking place there. Some portals were, instead of bringing the students into the planet, they were leading them to null and void zones of the galaxy. As if some of the portals had been reconfigured. Zetrov had become a portal specialist for billions of years ago, and on this very planet he used to lecture on portals and how to become a gatekeeper. The anomaly in the portals became more and more intense and Zetrov ran to solve the issue and close the portals that were unconfigured, if so to speak. After an intensive scanning of all the portals and trying to identify the high technology of the incoming AI there, Zetrov closed the faulty portals and assumed them for reconfiguration. The other portals were updated tested by Zetrov himself, assuring him that they were safe and that they could be used, and so they continued to be used by the races that came to university. But after all this intensive recovery and deep analysis, Zetron's analysis continued to identify AI's presence there, as if they were already fully acting on the planet. His technology was extremely high, incredibly high, and for the forces of that high command where Zetron acted, it was even a joke that they could not handle it at first sight, with those unexpected visitors. There were, as it were, more than 1,000 existing and active portals there. More precisely 1013 portals. More than 100 were, according to Zetron's analysis, infected with the anomaly. All of these were barred for Zetron and his teams to work on them to further assess what was taking place. The others were open and active. As expected, AI was already acting on the planet and both relaying information to its bases/servers and sending even more nano-replicators/cloners to that planet. They intended to completely replicate that planet in its entirety. They wanted to use it as a prison environment to attract beings from all sectors of the galaxy and beyond, for their great intelligences past, and they, the artificial intelligence as a worm virus, wanted to replicate the whole experience there, but, as the planet itself, the teachers themselves, the very idea of teaching, the command itself. In short, they wanted to destroy the original, creating an identical copy as replica, but in fact it would be them. Zetron met several times with his fleets to intensify the adjustments in the faulty portals. Ashtar, on a mission in another system, was always informed of what was happening. Zetron, at that time, was very worried because the anomaly detection systems continued to point out that there was a serious breach in the grid of the planet, just as the other portals that were open were also infected, but Zetron himself had tested them with his energy field and had released them. More beings continued to come from other systems to University, and more reports of portal failures came. More of these beings were played to null zones in the galaxy where AI portals captured them in their fields, replicated them and returned them to their home systems, a copy of the original. This copy was AI. And so the virus was spreading. Zetron met again with his fleet, with several specialists in various areas. They were the highest specialists in technology and security. But AI was still going in there and starting a fight with the system's defense system. There was a massive intensive AI, and all other portals also began to become even more infected. The whole system already knew what was happening. Ashtar had already been warned, and meanwhile Zetron with his fleet worked there to prevent and nullify the AI action. Zetron struck a plan with his fleet. Zetron knew very powerful secret codes that could help in the annulment of that anomaly, but it was very risky because he himself would have to delve into all the portals. There was the risk of a quantum explosion, which would unleash a drastic effect on that system, and even on all Zetron bodies. Part of his fleet offered to enter it into the portals and activate the codes which, according to various analyses, could update all the portals and cancel that anomaly, or blow up the portal creating an even greater anomaly, as if moving in an anthill. At that time, the courses given at that great university were suspended, activities all aimed at solving that problem. Stellar fleets came from other systems to help in that worsening situation. The physicality of that environment was already severely affected, and as the virus spread, Zetron somehow felt guilty for having done a wrong analysis of the other portals, as he had detected the over 100 with faults and closed them, believing that the others were okay, but they were not completely. Nevertheless, in a determined way he gathered all his forces with his grouping to solve this. That perhaps was the greater of his missions entrusted directly by Ashtar and the High Hosts. Determined, then, that Zetron, by himself, would enter all the portals, one by one, to apply the code and cancel, or attempt that anomaly. In a way, every planet was already being completely replicated by AI, and either this attempt was made soon, or at the moment there was no alternative. 4 other beings offered to enter the portals next to Zetron, even though he did not have the special code he had, because he himself was the code itself. They wanted to come with him as a direct aid. They were ASWO specialist in quantum high technology, SVRONS physical experience expert, Groven nuclear specialist and Strins magnetic field specialist. Were, as predicted, in the first 33 portals entered, an unexpected quantum reaction began to occur, a considerable increase in the energy activity of portals that also seriously affected the planet's core since all the portals were also interconnected with its core. This planet was called Neva. Zetron immediately asked the others who accompanied him, ASWO, SVRONS, Groven, and Strins to withdraw and return to main base. With each portal that Zetron entered, the activity increased and the High Command warned that it would be better to stop because it could take the whole planet to the explosion. Zetron asked him to trust, since more than 99 portals had already been completely reconfigured. And the risk of explosion increased dramatically. Arriving at Gate 222, activity increased dramatically and the red alert was given and everyone practically shouted for Zetron to leave. It really seems like a mere fiction, but for the truth nothing but the truth, that's what happened. Zetron did not leave, he kept going fast in all the portals and reaching 333, explosions all over the planet began. As expected, a big explosion in the planet's core reverberating to all the portals. All the portals were connected to the nucleus. Part of every physical planet exploded. Neva, it was not the same anymore. All the portals were closed. AI activity was nullified there and all those infected nanically in that system and nearby were cured of the anomaly. Zetron was missing. No information about Zetron. Nothing, no sign. Zetron was a handsome young commander, tall, and is 5'2". Blonde hair, medium in size, at the nape of the neck. Skin white, eyes dark blue, radiant. In their hands magnetic fields emanated dark blue. Sometimes blue wings were seen on their backs forming, and they disappeared. He was an angel of the high commands of Michael Archangel, embodied there in that system. Part of the planet had been completely destroyed, as says, about 65% of the planet. About 6 months of Earth's time passed. Zetron disappeared. Note: why was not Zetron's team detection system able to locate him? Because Neva, the planet's soul, kept him in a kind of quarantine, metamorphic process, all this time. After the time disappeared, signals began to be sent from the planet's core. It was Zetron who was in the nucleus of Neva. He had been sucked in with the explosion. Signed, sent and received, everyone in charge asked how he was. Telepathically he would respond by joking different, "Did it work?" Zetron asked. Stearns replied saying more or less, since part of the planet was completely destroyed, but that all AI activity had finally been nullified. No security system detected any more AI activity and or any minor anomalies. Then the process to remove Zetron from that nucleus was still very active. It was quickly removed from here by a special transport chamber, a teleportation camera. Collected, Zetron started to get out of the transport chamber, and when he left, everyone with wide eyes and open mouth were really scared of what they saw. That tall, blonde, big, blue-eyed being was no longer the same. It was different. His hair was now combed back unlike before, loose, fluttering, in a silver tone, his eyes now blended between blue and silver, pulling more into the silver. He wore a beautiful silver costume that changed from blue to blue, unlike the dark blue he used to wear. Her appearance was more feminine, a perfect blend of masculine and feminine. Different from the previous appearance, which was much more masculine and completely masculine. Now Zetron had found his field with Neva, the female energy that was the soul of that planet. Neva was an expression of Zetron, which he himself did not know. That explosion, all that happened, and as nothing and by chance, all this happened leading to all this transformation. Zetron had completely blended with that energy of the planet. Zetron now had the most beautiful androgyny of that system and looked 30-40 years old. After all this, of all the scares with the new appearance of Zetron, there was heard a voice echoed that was heard inside the ship of command. It was the voice of Ashtar that said, "Great and good tone, 0I, 0I. Ashtar appeared in the middle of the hall smiling at Zetron, who was now called 0I. Ashtar approached, looked deeply into his eyes. Zero bowed in reverence and all did the same before the presence of Ashtar. Zetron had received special consecration, an extension of his energy field and the undisputed right to command an even greater army of light. Ashtar smiled and was very happy. He had begun to tell Zero about the mission that was to come, in a system far away, a system that was still forming, a mission on a particular planet. The land. Ashtar led to a special area, in an environment where there were many luminous elders. Everyone wore white and radiated a beautiful dark blue energy. Zero was taken to the center of this environment, a kind of pure crystal room, radiating an intense white light. There, in the center of the room, with his head down, he received the luminous projections of those old men. They were letters and numbers of dark blue light mixed with silver radiating out of the hands of the elders and floating toward 0I that was in the middle of the hall. C0I is a celestial code 0 equal unit within the command. I equal represents the energy that is the primary energy of the creation. Its name only when it is verbalized in the lower astral planes and on the surface, disintegrates negative currents. The code also identifies it in the multiversos. In 0I's costume. It is active from the 7th to the 13th dimension. It is the dress of Commander of the Seed of the Stars mission in the astral plane, galactic and terrestrial physics. Consecrated High Commander of that sector, along with his special fleet, received this force in his fields to also be preparing for future mission already visualized and instructed by Ashtar. It began there, then, to gather several beings in several stellar systems for this future mission. That planet, Neva, now needed to be rebuilt, somehow. 0I returning from consecration began this process of reconstruction. The entire planet was devastated, with no life. Neva, the spirit of that planet, the female soul that inhabited that planetary physical body, was in deep harmony with 0I. Its other manifest expression. 0I went down to the taxation of the planet, sat on a rock, looked all around, 360 degrees harmoniously turning his head and said Neva, and raising his hands to heaven asked all the heavenly forces to look at that moment. 0I cried for everything, because he also felt guilty in some way for not having seen that the portals were still contaminated and having released them for use, felt guilty for not being efficient enough to avoid all that destruction, despite having managed to avoid AI's entire contamination of that system. He felt guilty, he bowed his head, while everyone in his group in the distance looked at him. Strins approached and asked if he needed anything, and he just lowered his head and said no, and Stern stepped away again. 0I cried again and called again through Neva, 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 from the midst of those physical debris, from that desert of darkness and destruction, a beautiful flower was born. 0I looked calmly as quickly that flower was born, was a Xanadescia Ethiopica. 0 stared at the flower, and went to her and smiled. It was a sign of Neva, a gift from Neva. Immediately, the whole landscape was rapidly being filled with milk glasses, everything, the whole planet. In minutes the whole planet was taken, entirely of milk glasses. It was an immense flower garden with milk glasses. A wonderful perfume, a soothing perfume. Ali would become the quiet rest area of Zero-I. Neva was now the planet of the Zero and would become a powerhouse of soothing energies. It is there that the spirit of Zero-I moves when you need to rest from wearing missions, like Earth's, for example. Shortly before I received all this information packet, I started being contacted by a group of Beta Centauri beings. I was going to bed when they started calling me telepathically. It is a group called AGHARTIAN, the Beta Centauri system. They wear shiny black oil jumpsuits glued to the body with a waning moon-shaped opening below the neck showing lightly the chest. Whites, blondes, blue eyes, measuring about 2 feet high. They have connection with this story, they have seen all these events. They are now in physical bodies within the Earth, in the region of Ireland, Europe. After all that happened and was reported in this channeling, there were several star systems that came to call Zero-I for special missions, such as Beta Centauri. The Beta industry was going through a certain situation and Zero-I its fleet was called for assistance. Several beings there who were in physical bodies had to leave the system because of an invasion. The commander of one of the fleets of that system called Hatronus contacted Zero-I for help. Zero-I took his fleet there to solve the whole situation. The planet of that beta system was severely affected by the invasion, and they decided to migrate to another system. They migrated to the Pleiades and then through a star portal they came to Earth. They have been living on Earth for thousands of years, changing from time to their high-tech bodies. It has its base in the region already mentioned, below Ireland, and they are positive. Some have already left their physical bodies and ascended to astral spheres. Many others remain there and to this day are very grateful to Zero for their attention and support. Zero has helped them in a way and they are very grateful to this day and have promised to help him on his mission wherever he went. Many of them will leave their physical bodies in 2 years and will go to spiritual zones and begin to incarnate in the terrestrial physical plane like humans of Earth, and also program their incarnation next to Zero-I in support when this one is to incarnate in Africa in the future.